Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. This one we're just gonna be continuing on the gouache portrait journey and painting another portrait in the A5 Ganson Excel sketchbook. And we're gonna be painting this guy that I found on Pinterest and saved to my portrait reference board. So I'm using gouache again this time, starting out with a drawing with some ultramarine blue and some PR 122 magenta, granulated magenta, because I thought that would complement a yellowish skin tone somewhat well. And my goal for this one was to create the colors with a lot of color variety using the different layers of gouache. So with a complementary layer on the bottom and then more opaque colors scumbled on top to see how they would mix. So that's what I'm gonna do with the coat later on, for instance. And here I'm just starting to fill out the colors and get some value going, starting off with some more warm colors on the face that will hopefully peek through the top layers. And here I'm just adding some purulene red to the coat as the first layer, and as I said, my goal was to try and combine the colors by scumbling. So here I'm doing complementary colors, what I wanted to end up with, which is like a dark blue was what I was going for. I wanted to scumble cobalt turquoise on top, so here I'm just doing a bottom layer with purulene red. Purulene red is one of my all-time favorite colors. It's like a deep blood red, transparent red, which is really rare. It's like a warm red that's transparent, and I think, to my knowledge, it's the only pigment that is truly a warm, transparent red. All of the naphthalene red and other kind of modern organic pigments that are red and transparent are usually cold reds. So this is a very precious color to me because I think it's super useful, and it's the only one that can actually do what it does. That can actually act as something that adds natural glow and depth and warmth to your colors, because when you use the modern artificial ones, it just ends up looking like plastic or slightly artificial and non-real. So that's why I love purulene red. And these layers are just pure colors. They're not intended to be the actual value of the area. It's just gonna tint it with a hue, so later on I'm gonna add some dark brown and blackish layers to end up with the final value that I want. So here I'm just going in with a mixture of transparent red iron oxide and ivory black to darken all of the drawing and make it coherent, and make all of the bottom hues the correct value that I intend them to be, so that I can put the lights on with some opaques afterwards. So here I'm preparing some pure cobalt teal to scumble on top of the dark red coat, trying to see what happens when you do that. I was hoping for a like dark blue coat that had some color variation that looked sort of purple reddish. So here I'm just going in with a thin layer of that, quickly realizing that it is much stronger than I thought it was, and that this just looks like a cobalt teal coat now, so I'm gonna have to fix that later. So here I'm preparing some skin colors using titanium white and cadmium red light in order to paint in the lights on the face. So I'm just trying to sculpt the face using this light mixture. And here I'm already realizing that something is totally wrong here. The proportions are way off, which is my greatest fear when doing these videos, because I'm used to drawing with the drawing pad on my lap, so in the exact same angle as my face. And then you see the proportions correctly, like something which you don't do, in my opinion, when you sit drawing with the drawing flat on a table, because whatever is the farthest away from your eyes will look shorter, and whatever is closest to you will look more normally proportioned. So you have to have a brain that is wired to do that, and I haven't trained my brain to draw with the drawing flat on the table. I don't know how people do that. At least I can't for the life of me do it, but you have to get used to do that when you want to film yourself drawing, because otherwise it's hard to get a good shot and you guys can't really see anything. The angle is already oblique enough like this, and if I have the drawing on a drawing board or an easel, then the angle is gonna be even more oblique and even worse. So, but yeah, what I feel the most happened with this one, and the proportions are way off. And here I'm just rendering, hoping that I can fix it with the rendering, but yeah, that's not gonna happen. I'm also trying and kind of suggest the 3D shape of the coat here instead of rendering every single detail. That's one of the things I'm trying to get better at, just suggesting the things that are not important, so that you get like that effect of the face or whatever the area of focus is being totally sharp and crisp, and unimportant areas just being suggested in a cool and quickly done way that is painterly and nice to look at. But I find that is actually one of the hardest things to do, because you can't just rely on lines when you do that, because that will result in whatever object you're painting looking exactly like the point of focus, something with a lot of detail, a lot of contrast, and a lot of thin lines and a lot of detail. So you have to be really good at imagining the shadows and the cast shadows and the values of the shadows in the objects that you are painting in a suggestive manner like this. And that is really hard, I think. But I think I somewhat pulled it off with the jacket here. So here I'm just taking a photo of the drawing looking straight on, and as you can see the proportions are just wrong in exactly the way I feared they were gonna be, with the top of the head being way too long, because that is what you see the most in perspective when you look at it flat on the table. When you realize something like this, it's just better to start over and stop polishing a turd, as you probably heard people say. And I tried to use some liquefying Clip Studio paint to prove my point, and here you can see if you make the face less long, it just looks way better. Look at this abomination, what is this? So I caved on I did what had to be done. I put the drawing up on a drawing board so that I can see it properly and in proportion. Unfortunately, that makes it so that you guys have a worse angle, and yeah, sorry about that. Luckily, it's always much easier to draw it the second time when you have the practice and the knowledge that you got from drawing it the first time. That's why it's usually just much easier and almost always quicker to just repaint it instead of going on and on trying to render something that is just fundamentally bad. So moving down the eye sockets and the eyes, the mouth was still fine and the bottom of the nose was still fine. I was a little bit sad that I had to repaint the hair because it turned out so well. I think I stylized it well. I think the silhouette looked cool and the highlight looked cool, but yeah, too bad. Happily it ends up looking almost the same in the end. That's a great thing about gouache, is that you can just paint over your mistakes and you don't have to worry about anything really. And any old versions and old layers that you might be able to see through will just add to the texture and the coolness of your painting. Just tightening up the hair even more, trying to make it be a stark, dark silhouette that is kind of graphic looking. That's always one of the great debates I have in my head when drawing, is whether I want something to be graphical or rendered in a realistic way. I've always been very inspired by fashion drawings, and especially fashion drawings from the 40s and 50s, which are really graphic and always have cool gestures and cool brush marks, and that's always kind of the look I want to go for. But then I also want to paint it realistically and have a cool rendering with some painterly brush strokes, so I'm always internally debating that. Here I'm just trying to render the neck in a way that is not over-rendered. As always, trying to understate the neck rather than overstate it, which is really hard when you've spent a lot of effort trying to learn off the muscles and your sinews and the bones of the body, just trying to not draw everything you've learned in the tiniest detail and trying to state the overall shapes instead. So here I'm just scumbling in some lights on the shirt collar. I think it turned out quite alright, even though I'm not totally happy about the way I painted the shadows on the shirt. It doesn't make total sense in that there's no real cast shadows on it, but it looks cool and fashion drawing-y, so I just decided to keep it instead of trying to make the cast shadows totally correct and destroying all of my hard work with the scumbling. So here's the final result. I think it turned out quite well, and that just goes to show that you always have to pull yourself together and just redo it when you have just a slight feeling that it's wrong, because it will always turn out better, and that gut feeling is almost always right. So yeah, paint over your mistakes, guys. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching and hope to see you next time. Bye!